So we are going to be starting off with the AFC, Baltimore Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals, and then moving on to the Lions, Packers, Vikings, and everybody's favorite, Bears.
The Bears.
Baltimore Ravens, we're going to go and start off with the AFC conference number 1 seed, just not the representative in the Super Bowl. They have $12 million in effective cap space, and I'm going to keep explaining this every single week. Effective cap space is going to be different than their actual cap space. If you look at a place like Over the Cap is going to have them roughly at, if I can find it, I am looking for them at 16.6. The effective cap space, again, is around 12. So again, effective cap space is taking into account signing your rookies after the draft. It's taking that into account. So it's more likely their cap space is $12 million. That's why I say that. Starting off with cut candidates, honestly, I had a really hard time with a lot of these teams, going from the Ravens, Steelers, Bengals. A lot of these teams, I had a really hard time finding a cut candidate. For the Ravens, they're one of those teams. I couldn't really find a cut candidate for them to free up money. Guys who maybe are underplaying their contract right now, I had a hard time. So do you have a cut candidate for this Baltimore Ravens team?
No, I mean, not really. I think the Ravens are one of the really well put together teams right now in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think that our must resign for them is going to be pretty boring also. But I think that the NFL, I struggle a lot with these. I think a lot about the Ravens, the Chiefs, the 49ers, and the Cowboys, because let's take the Chiefs out. We know they need a wide receiver. But the Ravens, Cowboys, and 49ers, they were the badasses in the NFL this year. Super Bowl be damned. What do these teams do to get better this upcoming year? And I've struggled a lot with that, trying to figure out, especially knowing we were going to do the Ravens this week because the Steelers are easy, right? I was just like, man, what can the Ravens really do? What can they bring to the table to significantly upgrade their franchise this year? And I'm just not sure how much there is out there, except for Lamar needs to take a step.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Outside, yeah, I mean, you can't really save a whole lot of money right now if you're the Ravens in terms of cutting people. Now, this isn't a restructure type show. We're not going to talk about restructures or extensions or anything like that. So obviously they can move money around with doing some restructuring or extensions for some of their guys, but cutting, I can't really find it to save them some money so they can go out and go get guys. But again, it's like you said, who do they really go get? I do have a couple of targets, mainly on that offensive line, guard-wise, but that's really it. That's all I really got. The re-signing, you said it's going to be pretty boring, so your re-sign guy is probably the obvious one.
A certain linebacker that we all know and love. Yeah.
That's your re-sign?
Yeah, who are you going to go with?
Justin Matabuke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually don't even have Patrick Queen on here at all.
Well, we keep trying to say that Patrick Queen has to go to every freaking team. You know what I mean? We're like, oh, they can really use Patrick Queen. Couldn't the Ravens use Patrick Queen?
Yeah, and it's like, but it's that same conversation. How many teams are paying 2 linebackers?
With 2 good Achilles? Not many.
I was gonna say the Niners, but I don't know if that's a sore spot. Justin Matabuke is my for sure re-sign guy. You got to bring back. He's going to be projected a 4-year, $92 million contract, $23 million a year, $60.25 million guaranteed. And I do have one more too. I have Kevin Zeitler as your guard. If you're going to be trying to bring back one of your guards, you got to Kevin Zeitler, 2-year, $15 million, $7.5 million a year. And then $9.5 million in guarantees as well. And then my free agent targets are all guards. Again, I think it's that offensive line has to be at least the target. But again, this is one of those teams. It's hard to find what area do they improve in, because I don't think they go out and you can't go sign a difference maker and wide receiver right now. I think that could maybe come in the draft, but I don't think that difference maker comes in free agency personally. So your free agent targets right now, who do you got right now?
Well, wow, that was loud. My computer reset, and all the little things that go off in your ear and everything are really, really loud. But this is the conversation that I was talking about. I just don't know. I don't know what the Ravens do. Matabuke was the obvious one. I totally agree with you on that one. They have to bring Dalvin Cook back because he was huge for them last year. Just kidding. I do think they need to add at running back though. But it's really just kind of boring with them. Offensive guard, offensive tackle. That's probably who. That's really where they need to be at.
Yeah, it's a lot of trenches talk.
Especially if they're in that area in the late draft where there's going to be a couple wide receivers sitting there, but there's also going to be a couple tackles sitting there. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go, because I really think running back, wide receiver, and offensive line, Odell Beckham is a free agent. I think another one of their wide receivers, Devin Duvernay, I think he's a free agent. So of course these aren't game changers by any type of, stretch right now, but it's still depth, and you need depth, especially against the on the offensive line. The Ravens have shown that they need depth at the running back position. You need depth at the wide receiver position. So they really seem like they'll be in the mix for some of those second class, third class. I shouldn't say that second and third class, but you know what I mean. Like they're not going to go out there and try to trade for Brandon Ayuk, but they might try to sign Jawan Jennings. You know what I mean? They may not be in the market to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, but they might be out there trying to get a Kello Witherspoon. That type of player for the Ravens is where I think they're mostly going to be.
Yeah. Guard wise, I have Dalton Reiser and Graham Glasnow as guys they could go out and go get. For Reiser, you have a 3-year, $24 million contract, $8 million a year, $15 million in guarantee, but a cheaper contract with Graham Glasgow, 2 years, $13 million, 6.5 a year, with 6.5 in guarantees. So kind of depends on which way you want to go. The other favorite, I will throw it out there too, is a lot of people kind of have that sneaky discussion of the Ravens maybe trying to go out and go get a Derrick Henry. And you say, oh, well, do they have the cap space for that? Well, we saw them clear up cap space and move stuff around for a guy like Odell Beckham. And I don't get the Odell Beckham hype for years and years and years now. It's so overblown, and I'm so tired of it. And yes, that's my bias as a Cowboys fan and not liking the Giants as well. So I don't understand it. But they went out and they signed him to like a 1-year, $15 million contract. They move money around to do that sort of thing. So moving money around to maybe go get a Derrick Henry in the backfield with Lamar Jackson is maybe the right move. How do you have the personnel on the field to deal with a Derrick Henry and a Lamar Jackson? Right? That could be the mismatches for defenses to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that was just to try to make Lamar happy. The Ravens are a unique case. I don't know how much better you can get without a complete overhaul of that team. It's just like, I don't know. There's some of the top teams in the NFL right now. I don't know how they get much better without massive just overhauls. I don't know how the Bills get much better, except for Josh Allen just needs to beat Patrick Mahomes. It's a tough question to ask when you're talking about Super Bowl aspirations, which these group of teams have.
Yep. Moving on to second place now, the Cleveland Browns have about $2 million in cap space, again, effective cap space. I have 2 cut candidates here. I'll go ahead and start it off. The obvious one is Nick Chubb. You cut Nick Chubb, he's on the chopping block right now, $11.8 million saved in guarantees. Running backs are a dime a dozen right now. I'm not saying all running backs are the same and they're built the same. They're definitely not. The only valuable running back in the league right now who deserves a massive contract and deserves all the money that he's getting is Christian McCaffrey. That's the one who makes the big difference on a team right now. Nick Chubb, as much as I love him, he's one of my favorite running backs in the league. $11.8 million saved, coming off of a major injury, which he's had a couple major injuries in his career already, going all the way back to Georgia. He's one of my big cut candidates right now.
Yeah, I think Nick Chubb, unfortunately, he's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I also have Elijah Moore. They could probably cut as well. $11.1 million. $3.1 million. 11, nice. $3.1 million in savings if they cut him. Really didn't do a whole lot. I don't know if he really fits into the offensive scheme. They're probably going to keep him around, but he's a guy that they could maybe move on from, especially since they have some guys that they might want to re-sign. I have 2 names here. Zadarius Smith, 2 years, $24 million, $12 million a year, and $19 million guaranteed. Zadarius Smith played really well he's one of those guys that didn't put up a whole lot of numbers, but he still made an impact on the field regardless. But he's the more expensive re-sign. Do you have another guy out there that you maybe want to take a crack at for re-signing?
He's making that much money, huh?
For a re-sign?
Za'Darius. No love for Flacco, huh?
I mean, you could if you want to.
I don't know. What are they gonna do? What are the Browns gonna do?
I think it's an interesting question because they're a team that made the playoffs, regardless of injuries to the cornerback position, regardless to poor play, not wanting to play, injuries, I guess, with their quarterback. But they're still in the playoffs. But they're also not in a position to draft a quarterback. You don't want to reset. And you're also not in a position to sign a veteran quarterback because you already have one on the roster that you guaranteed all this money to. And you can't do anything. You can't move off the contract. So they're in this like weird, I don't want to say purgatory because they could make the playoffs again. But it's like how you can't really go too far. Is the wild card as far as you can go, the divisional? I don't know. I can't really talk, whatever. But like, is that as far as you can really go with your team? Like you're not making it there with Deshaun Watson unless he turns into 2019 Deshaun Watson. You're toast. You're sitting there. You're eating your Wheaties. You have to deal with what you got to deal with him.
Outside of him just returning to form, they're in trouble.
Yeah,
I don't really know. I don't really know what. I don't think anything matters for the Browns unless Deshaun Watson is going to do. Unless he's going to be Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
It's been so long, and he had one good year.
Yep. Yeah. Free agent targets. You got anything? I only have a couple of safeties that they could run after.
I mean, I think they need an edge. They need to, if they're going to lose Za'Darius Smith, then they need to put someone on the opposite side of Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
And if they're going to cut Nick Chubb, you can't just replace, you can't just bring in Joe Blow. Nick Chubb was a do-it-all for them. Safety is definitely a concern. And they don't have a first-round pick, right? Went to the Houston Texans.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so the Browns and the Panthers don't have a first-round pick.
You gotta fill that spot somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't think I have Cam Curl as a potential target. I don't know if they're really in the market for it. He's projected a 4-year, $50 million contract, 12.5 a year, $28 million in guarantees, but a smaller 1-year contract that they could run after, depending on how much you really want the guy on your team. A 1-year, $5.33 million contract, fully guaranteed for a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson. Out most of the year last year, comes back for the playoffs. Again, he's depending on how much you really want the guy on your team, he's going to come cheap. You need to address the concerns of safety, and he has played well in the past, and he is a locker room presence, like him or not. So that's all I got for them, really. Unless you got something else.
I just it's hard to talk about the Browns when their biggest issue is obviously if their quarterback is any good, and you can't really. It's kind of like the Broncos. You can't really get off of them. I mean, the Broncos are going to try to get off of Russell, but it's just the Browns are in a tough spot.
Yep. And talk about another team that doesn't have a quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers, about $5 million in cap space. I have a handful of cut candidates right here. I'm going to go ahead and let you take the first crack at the Steelers cut candidates. Who you got?
Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph.
Their whole quarterback room.
Yeah, just cut them all. Throw them out. I'm not here for the like actual. I'm having a fit over here. I'm not here for the actual like detailed analysis. I'm here for like get Kenny Pickett off the football field, please.
How do you there's two guys, veteran quarterbacks that are tied to the Steelers right now. I think the most. No, I'm not going to say Justin Fields because I'm tired of the conversation. Ryan Tannehill and Russell Wilson are two guys who are tied to the Steelers a lot. Now, those guys aren't going to take you per se to the Super Bowl, but I don't know if the Steelers really care about the Super Bowl that much when they just care about not losing. So how much stock do you put into guys like those coming to the team? Do you think they're really going to bring those guys on? Because Kenny Pickett's not starting next year. I think that's the only guarantee we can make.
Listen, bro, until Kirk Cousins signs with the team, I want every team to sign Kirk Cousins. So fair. I don't hate Ryan Tannehill, but I'm just like, I don't think Ryan Tannehill's all that much better than Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? Like, what makes Ryan Tannehill successful was a really good wide receiver and a great running back. And
a lot of play action.
yeah, I mean,
yeah, no, for sure. Number one cut candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers for me is Allen Robinson. You could save $10 million by cutting Allen Robinson. I mean, I have other guys written here too who played mediocre, played okay is probably the stretch you can make. Patrick Peterson aging, $6.8 million. Cole Holcomb, $6 million. I mean, there's a couple of guys they can move on from. Will they? I'm not sure. I think Allen Robinson's really the only big one that they can and that they will. Surprising he hasn't been cut up to this point, even though we've seen lots of cuts already before the official new league start. And re-signing, I don't really have anybody for the re-signing. I don't think they're letting anybody go to free agency that they need to bring back or bring in because the Steelers aren't very good. And the guys that they're walking right now, they're not very good. The whole team's just mediocre. You're lucky to get into the playoffs at the end of the day. So I don't really have anyone for re-signing unless you can throw a guy in.
They got a pretty good, I mean, their whole identity is their head coach, right?
Right.
Dude, they're such a mediocre. I mean, Levi Wallace is a good corner, you know.
Yeah, that's the only one I was considering.
You know, this division is terrible. There's nothing exciting to talk about on this division. I mean, honestly,
this was
I don't
tough.
I don't know if anything in the last 15 minutes is even going to make the TikTok or the YouTube shorts at this point. I might have to take my shirt off or something, go crazy. That way we get some views because Allen Robinson is obviously, I mean, it's kind of funny. You said that, and I hopped on Twitter real quick just to see if he had been cut because I'm like, well, that seems like an obvious, you know, what they would do, and they haven't yet. So,
yeah,
to save that money, I don't know what they're saving that money to do because I don't really know who would sign up to go to Pittsburgh at this point. But
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean. And I don't think you want to sign I don't know how old he is. He's got to be in his early 30s by now. But Quan Alexander, hard to keep him on the field. He's getting hurt all over the place.
Not even playing well, even though even when he is playing on the field, he's not playing well. I mean, that's at the end of the day.
49er legend.
Right. Well, for the free agent guys that they should target, you should be looking at offensive line. Two guys that I have written down here. Center, Andre James, coming from the Raiders. 3 years, $27 million, $9 million a year, $15 million in guarantees. If you're looking for a smaller prove-it deal for a young guy who has all the athleticism in the world, who just can't stay on the field, a guy like Mekhi Becton might be a target to go after. A 1 year, $5 million fully guaranteed contract. He just can't stay on the field. He has all the athleticism. He has the tools. He can get it done. He just can't stay healthy. Your offensive line sucks. You do have a really good young tackle. You need another one, though. So maybe consider a cheap deal like that. Could get it done for you. So, I mean, you think about it, then maybe it's not a great signing, but if he stays on the field and he stays healthy and all of a sudden he blows up, looks like a pretty damn good deal for you. So, you have anyone for the Steelers?
I want to know why it is when I talk about the Jets potentially keeping Mekhi, you ridicule me, but all of a sudden he's like your number one for a team to add. That's what I want to know. Explain.
Because he's cheap for that team. The thing is the Jets need to move on from Mekhi Becton. It doesn't work out, you move on at the end of the day. It's like anytime if the Cowboys draft a player and he doesn't move on and all of a sudden he plays well, we were not the team for him. We could not keep him healthy. We were the issue there, which were the issue in a lot of things. But I think right now the Jets can't provide Mekhi Becton with the type of, whether it's strength training, whether it's the right diet, whatever it is from Mekhi Becton, he cannot stay on the field right now. And maybe the Steelers are one of those teams that can. So again, I think you could take a flyer deal on it. And plus, when you're a high draft pick like that, guys get bad taste in their mouth. Mekhi Becton going to the Steelers for a $5 million deal is a lot better for Steelers fans than coming back to the Jets. You would roll your eyes as a Jets fan. Be like, dude, we're bringing this guy back again. Why? Why are we doing this again? It's just a different taste.
Yeah, so I guess they bring Mason Rudolph back.
Yeah, that's I think that's the plan. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. This division is so insignificant. It's just like,
yeah. Moving on to at least a little bit more exciting, the Cincinnati Bengals. They have $45 million in cap space, which super surprising. They have this much cap space considering they're paying a quarterback, but they have a bunch of guys on a lot of cheap deals and rookie deals. So, cut candidate for this team, I got nobody. I have nobody for this team to cut. That's my opinion, though. I think a lot of guys
Okay.
who are performing at their contract level. I couldn't find a guy that I could say, yes, this guy right here, we're cutting him. He's not playing well. I had a hard time finding anybody. Guys like Trey Hendrickson, Orlando Brown, BJ Hill, Sam Hubbard, Alex Kappa, Mike Hilton, Ted Karras, all those guys played to their contract level or above their contract level. So I couldn't find a guy to cut on this team that would save them a significant amount of money. Maybe a couple of small things here and there, but nothing really significant in my eyes.
Yeah. Doing my research because nothing jumped off the page at me. And the problem is I didn't, all my notes I took I left at work, but they signed a safety, but then they turned to, because they lost Jesse Bates. So they signed a safety, and then they turned to their draft picks to start at safety mid-year this year. So they have a safety. I don't think he makes much. I think he saves them $3 or $4 million. Nick Scott, to like $3 million in savings. So it's not a ton, and you already have the money. But when you're a franchise like the Cincinnati Bengals, their expectations got to be to make it to the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every little bit helps. So, but when you look at a team like this and you can't signal out, we talked about some of the great teams. We talked about the Ravens. There's no obvious cut candidate. When we talked about the Cowboys, we're talking about Michael Gallup and his $4 million. I remember who we talked about for the 49ers. I think I brought up Dre Greenlaw. The obvious one was Isaiah Oliver, who they already cut. You know what I mean? These really good teams don't have these glaring mistakes on paper. And that's why they're at. Cincinnati Bengals don't have an obvious cut candidate. They have a ton of cap space, and their team is pretty much set to make a deep run if their quarterback can stay healthy. That's everything you want out of a really good team.
Hey, man, dude, they do things every other year. Every other year, they do something. So it's this next year the Bengals they're marching, man.
That's a fact.
Re-signing candidate, the big one I got is DJ Reader. 3 years, $45.75 million, $15.25 a year, $29.75 in guarantees. If you don't want to re-sign a guy like that, you could turn to the draft where you're drafting. You could grab a guy like Byron Murphy if he's sitting there from Texas. Newton is the other guy that you can also draft. But
who's the other guy? Devondre Campbell? Is that his name?
Tavondre Sweat.
Maybe that's what it is. Let me look it up. Now I'm here. Did you see what Chop Robinson did at the combine today?
No, I wasn't able to dive into all the guys in the combine.
Okay, I'll hold off on that then.
Yeah.
He put on a show. I'll just throw that out there.
Which is kind of expected, right? I mean, Chop is so athletic, and he has all the tools in the world.
Sweat, you had that right.
Yeah, Tavondre Sweat from Texas. I don't think he's really a first-round guy. He's more like a second-round guy. He's that hole plugger, right? He's the drain stopper. That's what he's supposed to be. Which no, he's not going to the Bengals. I want the Cowboys to draft him. So obviously we're not going to because Mozzie Smith is just so great. So we want to go ahead and keep him around. For the Bengals, I think something that they need to do, obviously, year after year after year after year since Joe Burrow has been drafted, is what? Fix your offensive line. And I think that my favorite target when I wrote this down, I think it was probably the most excited because obviously, if you listen to the podcast, Dalton Reiser and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Mekhi Becton, I don't think those move the needle for anybody. But someone I actually got really excited for and I really like this fit is Michael Winu. Coming from the coming from the Patriots. I think this is probably my favorite fit. 4 years, $58 million, $14.5 a year, $33.25 in guarantees. We're talking about a guy who's played snaps all over the offensive line. Late round draft pick. He's going to end up getting paid. He's not going back to the Patriots because he's not taking a hometown discount. I really like this fit for a team that constantly has injuries all over the line, that needs line help at every position. Michael Winu is someone to bring in my opinion. I really like this fit. It's probably one of my more exciting fits. Another guy I have two on top of that is Robert Hunt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be a little boring as far as the re-sign candidates, since you kind of skipped me there, brother. I think that the most obvious one is T. Higgins, but we won't go there because we've already talked about that. If you're going to let T. Higgins walk, Tyler Boyd is an obvious re-sign candidate because he's not going to command a ton of money. I still like the tackle, Jonah. I know he's had his ups and downs out there, but you're talking about drafting or signing tackle. Obviously, you got one that's there. And then my man, one of the best names in the game, Cheeto at the cornerback position. You know, it's just he's had an interesting career so far in the NFL, and I just think he's one of those guys that you can bring back as a second or third tier 4.49 second 40-yard dash for Chop Robinson at 254 pounds. 4.49 40. So you guys hear that sound? That's the sound of him rocketing up draft boards with a 4.49. So yeah, sorry that finally found the information I was looking for. 449. That's what he did today. So hey, listen, if you're going to come on the podcast, you need to do your research. We had a whole day of combine stuff, and you didn't even know that. So
all right, bro.
Just put Adam Schefter on notifications, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't use Twitter, so you're the Twitter guy. You know, you're supposed to do that for me.
Elon's app. Let's go.
You have any free agents that they should sign?
That is a big man moving very, very quickly. They just need to improve their offensive line. I don't care how they do it. I don't care if they sign every offensive free agent out there. I don't care if they sign Mekhi Becton and bring back Jonah and trade for whatever you got to do. Send your next 10 years of first round picks to the Detroit Lions for Penei Sewell. I don't care what you have to do. You have to keep your franchise quarterback healthy. He has had a pretty significant injury history now in his career, and you need to do what you can do to keep him healthy. So I don't care. I'm not going to name a player. I don't care who it is. I just want you to fix that offensive line and keep Joe Burrow healthy. Please.
Absolutely.
I'm asking